I'm creating this video, which I hope will be brief. It's as though I'm doing a kind of talk, but I'm aware that gather together various people I'd like to, in a sense, give this talk to, would take some doing and would be very impractical. So I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible. Those of you who know me well know that I'm perfectly capable of going off in many tangents, and you kind of begin to wonder where you are. So I'm going to try to keep this quite focused. I'm speaking primarily right now to my co-leads on the Quality and General Practice program, and others that are connected to that program, and also to my fellow GPs. And I want to share my vision for a possible future. When I signed up to the Quality and General Practice program, I was feeling pretty beleaguered and sort of rather not quite hopeless and sort of burnt out perhaps, but I'm not quite sure if much longer I could stick it doing this job. And so I signed up because I was worried that general practice in Tower Hamlets was at risk of meltdown in about 5 or 10 years. Certainly within sort of 5 years, but between the 5 years onwards, it was in trouble. Because I felt that there are a number of us going to be retiring, and if we retired early, that would make matters worse, and who was going to replace us, and so on. So how could we, explore a way of making this sustainable? We have a lot of good stuff in Tower Hamlets. How can we make it grow and work well? So I've learned a great deal in the 18 months or so that I've been doing this project, and I'm very grateful for having participated in the project. It's now coming to an end, so we have to think, how do we take it forward? So I learned a lot of things along the way, and I'm not going to try to summarize all of them. I'm just going to talk about one thing, really. I went to a quality forum at UCLP towards the end of November, and I went because my other co-leads couldn't go, so they said, oh, who can go? So I could go, so I went, and I'm very glad I did. So trying to stay focused, I'm not going to talk about the two main. There were a number of talks given in this thing. One was by some people from Basildon Hospital who had turned the hospital around from being in special measures to being, I think, quoted as good. And a lot of things they said were very inspiring, and we could learn something from that, but I'm not going to talk about that. What I'm going to talk about is, and show you some slides, is a presentation that was given by a geriatrician from Sheffield named Tom Downs. And I'll just sort of try to summarize briefly what he had to say, and then show you some slides. So in essence, he is running something called the Microsystems Coaching Academy in Sheffield, and what do? They train coaches, and those coaches are then sent into Microsystems to coach Microsystems. Now what is that? Very briefly, because I'm going to show you some slides, the idea is that he works in partnership with a health think tank from the US. And we'll see the slides, you'll see the name, I can't quite remember, the Dartmouth Institute for Healthcare Improvement, something like that. And they have a model of how you improve quality. And that model is that there are microsystems, there are mesosystems, and there are macrosystems. And what they aim to do is try to improve quality at a microsystem level. A microsystem would be something like a STD clinic. And so that the workers at that clinic and the admin people, the clinicians and so on, are the microsystem. And so that's at the level at which you intervene. And I'll show you some slides shortly. And then I'll say something after the slides so that you can, so thinking about, well, where do we take this? How do we take this forward? So let's look at some slides now. Okay, so these are the slides I want to show you. This is the title of this talk given by Tom Downs, the Sheffield Microsystem Academy, and so on, building improvement capacity across the healthcare economy. So let me just show you a picture of Tom Downs. That's him. Just it helps sometimes to have a face. So let's go back to the slides, and I'm just going to show you a few of them. So that's a document that Tom felt was important reading for everybody. I'm not going to dwell on that. You can look at it if you want to. Why clinical microsystems? And then he told us, he showed us this slide, and generally speaking, he said there are a variety of ways of trying to improve systems and so on. He quoted Toyota, Six Sigma, and a variety of others. And in essence, what he said is that they have chosen a particular approach, which is down here in the right-hand corner. the Dartmouth Institute, and I can't quite remember the rest of it. We'll see that again. So they have a system which they developed, and it might be that, I'm not quite sure. Let's go to the next slide. So why clinical microsystems? Now this slide seems to me to be vital, and in a sense we ought to have that sentence stuck up above our desks. So a nurse says to the guy who's sort of the brains behind this thing, I think, and he said, I see, he or she says, I see, you're saying that I have two jobs, doing my job and making my job better. That's very important. At the moment, most of us, I think, are just doing our job, but we don't really have any sense that we have a parallel job, which is doing our job better. So anyway, this is a slide which I'm not going to talk to, but you can kind of see, I think something about, don't worry about that. The details can be worked out at a future time. So this is their website, and if you want to go there, you can see the URL at the top of the slide and see kind of what the details of what they're offering. Okay, so it's the Dartmouth Institute for Health Policy and Clinical Practice. Okay, so we're not going to do that. Okay, this is an interesting thing. So slide in a sense, he says, your plans, and that, you've got a kind of goal you're trying to reach over here, and you've got your journey. And then he showed the next bit to the slide, which is actually the universe's plans for you. In other words, it's more complicated than you might anticipate. This, just basically, I'm not quite sure what he said about this, but basically these are the different bits of the Microsystems Coaching Academy. You have to coach training, microsystems conditions, introduction into quality improvement, network community, and so on. So there are it's a kind of systemic look at the whole system. So that we got that again. Now, I guess this thing was just saying perhaps that these are different microsystems within the Sheffield health system. Now, this is the second most important, another very important slide. Okay, so what are microsystems? Okay, so basically, down here, microsystem is, for example, a cystic fibrosis outpatient clinic. So that's at a microsystem. A mesosystem is, for instance, chest medicine across the Sheffield system. And then the macrosystem is sort of the whole Sheffield system, the hospital and so on. So what the Dartmouth Institute people think is that the health system can be no better than the small systems. In other words, all these different microsystems, that is what makes up the quality of the overall system. This was an interesting slide. He was talking about kind of how they work together, but I'm not going to go into that. Okay, so what he then did is talked about their the geriatric frailty unit, and he talked about this in terms of them using this particular microsystem coaching methodology. So anyway, so he showed that they opened something called the frailty unit. I'm not going to go into any details about this because I don't really understand the full details. But anyway, so they opened that up, and then I don't really understand what this slide says, but essentially there was an improvement. So something changed. So they say at the bottom, okay, they had a 34% increase in discharge with one day. So that was an improvement, So they said, another thing. Here's the frailty unit opens, and they have length of stay in the frailty unit reduced by more than 4 days. So something they introduced changed what happened, the outcome. Now, one of the really important things to remember in all this is they have data. They collect data, and they use the data to assess whether or not what they're doing is useful. So, okay, but I think here they were saying, okay, they had a concern, what would happen if would readmissions go up, whereas a revolving door sort of situation. So they checked that out and looked at the data, and actually they said, no increase in readmissions. So would there be an increase in mortality? So they looked at that too. No, there wasn't an increase in mortality, and whatever it was that they changed, and in fact, the in-hospital mortality dropped by over 13%. Then they had something called discharge to assess, and that was an idea that you discharge people from the hospital. Instead of assessing them in the hospital, you actually take them home and assess them at home. So they had a pilot for this, okay? And so they implemented this discharge to home discharge thing, and they found that something improved. Whatever this is, I don't quite know. And something else improved over this period of time. So back to this slide here. Now what Tom said, and I don't think I've got a slide to show you, but what he said is that using this methodology and improving, and he says it's continuous improvement. So it's not as if you start today and you're going to end this process in, say, 6 months or 12 months time. No, this is a way of life. Okay, here's a slide. This good quote. Okay, the leader should create and support the capability for learning and therefore change at scale within the NHS. I would put this at the top of the list of recommendations. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to stop there and make some comments. So you've had a look at those slides and my sort of random thoughts about it. And I hope that gives you some sort of sense of what it's about. Now, I don't know if you feel as excited as I do about the possibilities which such an approach. But just a few thoughts to round this video message off. So where are we in Tower Hamlets now? So we're rich in workers here. I mean, in the sense the nurses, GPs, practice managers, the healthcare assistants, and so on. And we have a great collective spirit. So we've got something that really is pretty unique. We're very fortunate, but we've got rough times ahead, and so there are challenges. Do we have systems in place to improve the quality of what we do for ourselves as the workers and for the human beings that use our services? I think the answer to that question is no, or at least it's pretty patchy. The way we deal with our challenges is largely reactive and firefighting. This is tiring and demoralizing. So I have a vision, and it comes in two different sizes. The small size is that I apply to go on and train with the Sheffield Coaching Academy. In fact, I sent off an application this morning to do this. And I do this, maybe later this spring or the next time around if they will have me. And then I come back to Tower Hamlets and I try it out on some microsystem within, say, our network. That's the small size. The large size is different. It's the Tower Hamlets GP Care Community Interest Company takes this on as a pilot. So we send a number of people to be trained. Now the numbers you can send are limited because the Sheffield Microsystems Academy, Training Academy and so on is for Sheffield. It's not for the wider, people all over England. So anyway, we get some people trained up and then we have a plan and so on. We roll it out as a pilot. And then if it works, it's potentially, you have to see if it works. If it works, then, and if it actually delivers, then, you can roll it out across the whole of Tower Hamlets as a methodology. So at the moment, the Health Foundation is asking for bids for innovative healthcare projects that aim to improve healthcare delivery. The closing date is something like the 10th of February. So can we, as the GP Care Group, make a bid for funding? Are there other ways of going about getting funding? Anyway, I may be jumping the gun. The rest of you have to be convinced that this sounds like a good idea. I can't do, there's no way. If you can't be convinced with what I've just shown you, then there's really no point in wasting energy carrying it on. Although I might well do it because I'm a bit of a eccentric. So I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are, and we can carry on our conversation via email or on the discussion forum. In fact, I'd prefer to do it on the discussion forum, come to think of it. And I'm sending out an email to a number of you. It may well get forwarded. I might send this video cast on to other people as well as I think about it. And if you want to know how to get on the GP discussion forum or the sort of primary care discussion forum, let me know, and I'll let you. I'll point you in the right direction. So over and out, and I look forward to further conversations about this. Thanks.